Welcome to the Dealmaker Catalyst podcast, and I'm your host, Jason Seward, and today's guest is Michael K. Cobb, one of the most recognized names in international real estate investing. Michael, visionary, founder, and CEO of ECI Development, is a leading force in international real estate. Since 1996, Michael has created dynamic residential communities across Central America, including Belize, Nicaragua, Panama, Costa Rica, Honduras, and El Salvador. His developments range from private villas and tiny homes in an oceanfront golf resort to a Marriott resort in Belize. As a former 14-year expat with his wife and young daughters, he understands the nuances of purchasing property abroad and provides invaluable support to overseas investors and expatriates. His insights are detailed in his book, How to Buy Your Home Overseas. Michael, welcome to Dealmaker.
Hey, Jason, good to be back with you. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. We had you on here a couple months ago on my other podcast, Burning the Ships, and I encourage folks to just go find that one and listen. We'll drop it in the links. But that, for folks that are looking to get the in-depth history and the story of kind of how you evolved to where you are now, that we covered all things that there. This one I'm really excited about because we're going to get into a topic that I would say most people that are attached to real estate in one way or another, either whether it's through taking vacations or just dreaming a little bit, have thought about owning something in another country, right? In kind of a destination place. And that has been your entire business model. You have evolved to being an owner, to being, and I'll let you get into all that, but being the bank, to being the developer and all things there. So I think a good way to tee this up, and we'll get into, I'll let you kind of tell the story and stuff like that here in a minute, but you gave me a quote that resonated so well with me. I want to start the podcast off with this quote. There is no competition outside the masses. Strive to be outside of the competition. Take that and run with it, because I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, man. No, but that to me, that just sums it up, right? And it's funny because about a year after I graduated from college, I graduated in 1986. So in 1987, I got my alumni magazine, and I can't remember who the alumni was, but I'm sad about that because I'd love to give attribution to the guy that came up with it, right? He was one of the college alumni. I tore that page out of the Allegheny magazine, and I kept it with me for probably 25 years, right? And it really has guided my investment business and investment career the whole time, right? We want to be outside the competition, right? I mean, don't play where everybody is. Go where people aren't. Or as was it Wayne Gretzky? I said, skate to where the puck's gonna be, right? And I think that was Gretzky. But that's the same idea. Don't fight where everyone is. Like, go to the next thing, find the next thing, forecast, right? And be outside the competition. Yep.
Right. I love that, and it comes. I love the fact. Do you still have that sheet of paper you tore out? That's pretty cool.
Sadly, no. I would frame it if I did.
Yeah, but I love that mindset because, like, as entrepreneurs, we're all competitive. Like, we have that desire to compete, but if you want to compete, I'd much rather play in a tournament with 6 teams than 6,000 teams, right? My odds are stacked very well against 6 teams, right? And that's exactly what you're talking about if you want to make a sports analogy. And I think, that's a great starting point because the path you eventually took and continue to take is so far outside of where everybody is thinking. I mean, you eventually started a bank around this stuff where nobody else had done it. So there was not just a little bit of competition. There was no competition. And you literally created the game,
We did. And now there's a little bit of competition in the space, which is fine. But the market is huge. And talking about the bank, right? But there was no mortgage money. Like, if you were coming out of, Virginia Beach or anywhere in the U.S. or Canada and you wanted to buy a property in Belize or Costa Rica or Panama, like, no bank up here is lending you the money, and no bank down there would lend a foreigner the money. So yeah, there was no competition. There was no market for this. Well, that's not true. There was a huge market for it. There was no service provider. And that's what we did. We created the service of mortgages for North Americans in Latin America. So that
Love it.
that was really like outside the competition.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do today, Mike, is I want to. I mean, you literally have written the book on how to buy uh,
Yeah.
property overseas and internationally. So we could spend 20 hours getting into the weeds of that book. We don't have time for that. So what we're going to do is kind of at a high level. I'm going to let you kind of walk through all the general concepts and all the fundamental skills and things that folks need to know. I encourage folks to take notes as you go along, but if you truly have an interest to learn more, again, Michael's written the book on it and he has resources available, and we'll drop all the links to everything below. But I encourage you to take this a step further beyond this podcast. So the theme today is literally going to be how to buy real estate overseas without making expensive mistakes, right? So
Bingo.
that's
I
the
think
theme.
that's
And
exactly right.
and so I'm gonna kind of open up the question to get the conversation started, or open up with a question. So almost 30 years ago, you left a successful career in the computer industry and headed into Central America. Looking back, what opportunity did you see at that time that most people completely missed?
Well, I think the first opportunity was the mortgage company. That was our very first business, right? To be able to provide mortgages where they were not available. Because up and until then, two things happened. The developer who was selling the property had to self-finance or turn the sale away, right? Look, you gotta write a check for it, or I'm gonna have to finance it. Because most North Americans expected to put something down and make payments, right? That's how we work, right? That's how we do homes and things like that. So that was our first business. But what was interesting, Jason, was that as I began to inspect the collateral, and that was my job, I was the boots on the ground guy. We're going to buy some mortgages from some developers. I would go look at the product. And what I found was, in most cases, many cases, like the product was actually really good. Like the bones were there. I mean, these were built well, concrete, rebar. But there were things that were off. Like you'd walk in and there'd be one outlet in the living room. And so people would have an outlet strip plugged into the top and the bottom with an extension cord to outlet strip so they could get power around the living room, right? Or the light in the bathroom would be back here instead of over here. So I mean, your face is always in the shadow, right? Or door handles. This was a beautiful one. I love this example.
Yeah.
Every door handle in several of the properties I visited were at different heights. And you'd say to yourself, like, how is that possible? Well, there were 4 guys in there putting door handles in, and every one of them did it right at a right angle of their elbow, right? Well, that's where it goes, right angle, right? And so you had these door handles. And so what we said, my business partner, I said, well, we could actually build product that was familiar and comfortable to a North American for the same money, because like all that stuff's free. Well, outlets cost a little bit of money, but generally it's free to fix that kind of stuff, right? And that was the genesis of our development company, was providing North American standard product, familiar product at basically the same prices that you'd get this weird kind of off, a little bit off, right? So that was it.
Love it. So where kind of, and we're gonna, I want to lay out like a framework. So and we'll get to this in a minute, but basically, someone that's interested and they're thinking about it, like
Yep.
what are the key fundamental steps to go? Before we get into that, I kind of want to preface all that with like where, like, you've been in it so long and you've helped so many people get involved. You've been involved obviously for many years. You've done the development, the lending, all sides of it. Where do you notice right out of the gate, where do most people get burned? What are they not seeing when they go to invest internationally and they get burned? Like where are you seeing commonalities there?
Well, I think that the process actually is what burns most people. And that's what this book is about. It's about the right process to buy real estate overseas. Because different people have different tastes. Oh, I want a fancy condo in Cabo San Lucas. Great. Go get it, right? I just want a simple house in the jungle, right, with no air conditioning. Okay, go get it, right? So it's not so much the product as it is the process by which somebody approaches the transaction, right? And by the way, my book is also about making an investment. Like, it doesn't have to be a lifestyle, right? If you said, hey, I'm going to go make an investment overseas outside my home country, even if it's not for use, it's truly just investment. The book is very applicable to that as well. And so the process really is people rush into it. The bottom line is people get what I call Margarita madness, right? They're having the time of their life, best vacation ever. I'd like to pick on Mexico because, Cancun is where it happens a lot, right? We've seen it over the years, right? Somebody just spent, the morning at the Chichen Itza Mayan ruins right on the ocean. And then they go to a cenote, which is a sinkhole cave, and they're swimming at the bottom of a sinkhole cave, right? Then they get back on the bus and they're liquoring them up with margaritas on the ride back to the resort. And then they're walking down the beach and somebody comes down and says, hey, come on up here and take a look at my resort, and if you spend an hour up here with us looking at some stuff, we'll buy you dinner at Senior Frogs tonight, right? And, an hour later, they've signed contracts and they're going to Senior Frogs to celebrate the condo they just bought. Like, this is not how we buy real estate in the U.S.
Can I pause you for a second? Because you literally described an example of something that happened with my wife and I in the Bahamas.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And probably it was 2019, so 7 years ago. We went, just the two of us, and we went and stayed on Cat Island, which is one of the out islands in the Bahamas. It is not much there. There's a couple resorts, but there was one development going on where they were trying to sell these like 2-bed, 2-bath little condos right on the water. So we went and visited it, went inside. The owner of the whole development happened to be there. It was kind of like nobody was there. And he was like, yeah, y'all go out, grab some kayaks, go kayaking. We come back. And now it's around 5 p.m. He's got these huge ribeyes ready for us. Like, I cooked us dinner, fed us. And I mean, he is like whining and dining us. And he's like, hey, you want to come look at some of these properties we're having for sale over here, these little condos? I said, sure, let's go over there. Now I'm a few drinks in. I got a big ribeye. I've been spoiled. We go over there, and the whole time my wife was standoffish. She knew what was going on.
Yeah.
We got back, and he's trying to get me to sign a contract to buy one of these properties, and and I almost did it, but it was exactly what you were talking about. So sorry to interrupt the flow there, but I had this. You were literally describing something that happened. So.
No, but thank you. That was a great. Good. Thank you. You lived the example. We've watched hundreds and I'm sure tens of thousands of people have been through that process, right? And not everybody is as savvy as your wife. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
So right, but a lot of people just move on through and they're signing, and then they've got something that they probably don't want. Probably, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but in many cases they don't, right? That's Margarita madness. And so what this book really talks about is a process by which you buy real estate overseas, and it really hangs on like there are 30 questions in the book, 30 questions that we should ask before we transact. Now, not all of them are applicable, but many are in pretty much every situation. But 30 things are hard to remember. So we boiled it down to 3 very simple principles. Buy what you see. If it's not there, maybe it will be, maybe it won't. We're gonna build tennis courts. We're gonna build a clubhouse. Right? If it's there, it's there. If it's not there, it's not there, right? So buy what you see, pay for what you see. Like, and one of the things we talk about, I just did a consulting gig for some folks down in Roatan. I said, look, they want you to pay $400,000 for this, this lot as if it already has road, electric, water, and it's not. It's just a piece of dirt on the side of a hill. I said, pay them some money, and then as they deliver the water, the road, the electric, pay them more, because at the end of the day, it's probably worth 400 if it has those things. So anyway, and by the way, I do a lot of work with clients, right? Helping them to do the due diligence, and it's part of our consulting service, right? So that's one of the things we do, and it follows the book very carefully. But buy what you see, pay for what you see. That's number 1, easy to remember. Buy what you see. 2, own community. There are a ton of ghost towns all over Central America and the Caribbean, Latin America, literally thousands of miles of property that's been chopped up into lots, sold, and there's not a house in sight, right? And they seem like they're a good deal. I mean, especially stuff on the Pacific coast of, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, Panama, like these half-acre lots on the Pacific Ocean, and anywhere from maybe $250,000, say in Nicaragua, to $1 million in Costa Rica. But if you're coming out of Southern California, you're like, holy smokes, just times 10. Like that's $5 million for that property in California, and I can buy it for $250,000, $300,000, $400,000. Sign me up. But there's not a house in sight. So it might be a great investment if you want to own it for 20 years and things start to develop, and then it is worth more, right? But it's not a place to live. It's not a place that people are going to go enjoy. It's a ghost town. And so, own community. And it also goes for condo communities. I mean, do you see a lot of people in the pool? Are people having a good time? Because if you're buying it for yourself, like, are they the kind of people you want to hang out with, right? Like, is it a kind of a community that you want to be a part of? On the other hand, if it's an investment, is it the kind of place that you're going to have renters, that the renters will come and have a good time? Because, if you're Airbnb in it or whatever, that's really important too. What are your rankings? Do people have a good time? How are they responding, right? So own community, know the community. The third one is know the developer, because this is the big assumption. The people just make these assumptions that things are like they are in the U.S. Lots of laws, lots of regulatory environments, and things like that. You've got to know the developer, because when you buy a product from that person, like, there's no government agency going to stand behind anything, right? There is no government agency in many cases to stand behind something. There's no Ralph Nader, there's no Lemon Law, or there's no consumer advocacy group, right? So the developer is your relationship. So get to know them, ask to see financials, meet people on their team, right? If you're ready to stroke a check for $500,000 or whatever it is, right? Or $100,000, that's a lot of money. $100,000 is a lot of money, right? So whatever that number is, you've earned it. You've paid the price to put that money in your bank account. You have the absolute right, and I would say even obligation, to question the developer, because the thing that's hard for North Americans, and I'm going to move back out of the three things. So buy what you see, own community, know the developer. Those are the three things that we can do in the process. But if I step back from that for just a second and say, why do we have to pay attention to those things? The reason is when we go outside of North America, we leave the land of seller beware. Seller beware. Lemon laws. You can send me a crappy car, I'm going to return it to you, even if I've driven it, 3,000 miles, right? We have Ralph Nader and all these laws and fair, fair reporting, fair credit, all those kinds of things, right? When you go overseas, none of that stuff exists. So in North America, it's seller beware. When we go outside of North America, it's buyer beware. See, we don't know what we don't know. We bring assumptions with us. Oh, like, if this thing's ratty, or if I don't like it, I'm going to return it. I'm going to assume. Like, no, you're not. You're not, right? And so the process by which you arrive at the decision to make the purchase follows those three: buy what you see, own community, know the developer. But the reason is we are transacting in a buyer beware environment. We don't know how to do it. And what the book does, right, is help us start to think strategically as in this environment that we're not familiar with. Like, we have this bubble of protection around us in the U.S., right? We do. We transact in a bubble of protection. Well, that bubble is gone. We're on our own. Now, some people would say, wow, it's scary. Well, maybe it can be. I like it, because what it really means, Jason, is freedom. Like, that when you don't have that bubble of protection, you've got freedom to transact, right? But the opposite side of freedom, the other side of that coin, is personal responsibility. And we have to take our own personal responsibility, because nobody's looking out for us. We have to look out for ourselves. But if we don't know how to do it, then, that's a problem. And the book helps people figure out how to take care of ourselves in this new environment.
Got it. So, yeah, the book's going to answer all the questions I have floating in my head. So I'll limit these to kind of like from a starting point. Like, you just knocked out three things, buy or pay for what you see, own the community, and know the developer.
Yeah.
Are there any exceptions there? So, like, if let's say you're the developer, and I've built a tremendous relationship with you, Michael Cobb.
Yep.
But you're down there. I trust you. I trust everything. You got 30 years of experience.
Yep.
But you're developing a property where, the price is based on something that's going to be there. So I can't see it. So are there exceptions where you can give a little more weight to one to maybe ignore the other?
Great question. A couple things. One of the things we talk about in the book, and we recommend this to folks that want to transact with us, is, get your own attorney. Like, we have attorneys, right? And if you really, really want to use our attorney, I can't stop you from doing it, but I am sure as heck going to recommend you do not do that. Get your own attorney, right? Get your own attorney, right? The other thing is that no, I would almost say there's no exceptions. When we price property and we price product, we do it in such a way that it's, if nothing's there, we say, well, look, you're going to give us a deposit of, whatever, 10 grand or something. And we make them fully refundable up and until some point, right? Whether it's starting of a road or whatever it is, right? But I mean, but when somebody comes to us, it's down payment up front. You're serious. We know you have the money. Okay, great. And then, and up and until we do whatever it is, start a road or whatever it happens to be, it's refundable. But once we start the road, okay, you're hard, you're locked in. And then we have people pay progress over time as we deliver certain things. Or if we're building a building, then it's, when the walls are up and the ceiling's on, certain things. So there's milestones so that nobody is really ever out in front of what's there. And I think that's the key, right? We eat our own, right? We eat our own cake, so to speak. And we expect that folks appreciate that. Our competition may or may not. Many do, by the way. I'm not slamming all the competition. In fact, I would even say that maybe most of the developers really do it in a similar way that we're talking about. It's the unscrupulous ones, and let's just call it 10% or 20. It's probably 20%. So 20% of the developers out there south of the border probably a little sketchy on their scruples, right? The problem is they're the most aggressive, right? And they promise the most, because the reality is if you plan to deliver little or nothing, you can promise almost anything, right? And I think
there's no limit to ethics, right?
Right. So promise everything. Who cares? Because we're not going to, And so the biggest piece of the book, and by the way, if I had to boil everything I just already talked about with the book down to one word, humility. Humility. We need to approach transactions overseas with the greatest degree of humility possible. There are no dumb questions. Every question is a good question. And go slow, right? Proceed with caution. Slow down, be humble. Like, that's two things now. But anyway, humility is number one, is the big one, right? But slow down is important too. And stretch the process out. If somebody's stretched for cash or they're pushing you, like, why are you pushing me? Like, let's stretch it out. Let's see what happens, right?
Yeah. Are there, let's say I'll just because it's easy, I'll use myself as an example. All of my investing, with the exception of, I mentioned one property in Puerto Rico,
Yep.
but everything else has been here in really the state I live in. And I've invested in some syndications across the country that are bigger. Some of those are struggling right now, but that's the limit of my investing. So when I think of investing overseas, and the Puerto Rico deal was somewhat like this, it was more of a lifestyle thing, just to give me a property and my family a property that we could go to a couple times a year and whatnot.
Right.
And if I think of like investing, I've had opportunities to invest in projects in Tulum and Costa Rica, Virgin Island, just a couple different opportunities there that I only viewed them through the lens of lifestyle. Like, how is this going to serve my family? But taking that hat off and putting the I'm an investor hat on, are there legitimate opportunities with similar risk profiles that I would find here investing locally compared to internationally with similar or better returns? Do you see that out there?
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think there are a couple things you can do as an investor. The first thing is recognize that you're an investor, right? The idea that let me just say this. A lot of our customers are lifestyle, right? They're moving, they're going to use it, they're digital nomads, whatever. They're going to spend a lot of time. It's a use product primarily as opposed to an investment product. In those cases, the decision needs to be a heart decision. Do I like the people at the pool? Do I like the food at the restaurant? Is there a cute little bar down the beach that we go dance at right? It's heart. It's, do I like it? Do I like the view out the window? Whatever it is. Heart, feeling. Investment is a head decision. It has nothing to do with whether I like it or not. And the best example I have is, even if I hated anchovies and I owned a pizza parlor, I would still sell anchovy pizza, because it's not about what I like, it's about what they like, the customer, right? And so when we're talking about investment, we're talking about a head decision. Do the analytics. Do the numbers work? Does it make sense? Critically thinking. Now, there's an affective piece to it, right? Is there a junkyard next door, and you're smelling, junk or whatever, or a pig farm or something, right? So there's some feeling to it as well. Or is it could be just simply ugly, right? There's things that are just ugly too, right? But at the end of the day, it's largely a thinking process. And so, yes, the answer to your question is yes. Now, how do you mitigate risk, right? You do it through critical analysis and looking at numbers and all that kind of stuff, right? Doing comps and digging into the due diligence with the developer, with the projects, lots of things like that. So there's that piece of it. A couple other elements. One, I would always, in my book, I have a chapter and I have a whole set of articles about this, and I've given presentations about this, because it's, Latin America, the developing world, is a time machine. There are places on the time machine that are way back, and there are places on the time machine that are way, like, almost like the U.S., right? And depending on your timeline, what you want in terms of cash flow versus property appreciation. So, for example, if you said, I'm going to buy a condo in Cabo San Lucas, like, you're pretty close to the top of the time machine. That's not very different than Southern California. Like, there's still a price difference, right? But it's popular, it's expensive. On the other hand, if you said, I'm looking for appreciation of an asset, right? And I want to get into the lowest price possible, you probably want to look at a country like Nicaragua, right? It's not very popular, right? You're not going to get very good cash flow initially, but your acquisition price will be very, very low. And so as it moves up this time machine and gets more popular over time, like, your cash flow is going to pick up, but your cost basis was very, very low, right? If you said, look, I'm just looking for cash flow right out of the gates, yeah, Cancun, Cabo, like, you're going to get renters, you're going to get cash flow, but your yield's going to be lower for a longer time, because you're not going to see asset appreciation over time, right? So those are the kinds of things we look at. Branding is another one. So first place is, where do you want to be on this continuum of, call it the time machine? The second thing is branding. If you're looking for a product, brands bring heads on beds first and foremost. Like, they are the people who put people in those beds paying nightly rates, right? Brands do that. Marriott, Hilton, probably certainly the two biggest in this part of the world. European brands are different, but let's just stay on this side of the pond, right? So Marriott and Hilton, your branded is solid, right? Other brands out there don't do maybe as good of a job. So look at the numbers, look where you want to be on this continuum, and then look at a branded product and say, you know what? Yeah, these guys can drive business. They can put heads on beds. And then, look at the numbers. Here's my rule of thumb. If this is exactly, I think this is in my book too, and if it's not, I probably need to add it in the second edition. I think it is. Anyway, when a developer tells you that you're going to make, they always have performers, right? We have performers. We put them out there, right? Hey, at 60% occupancy, you're going to make, 8-9%, or okay, fine. I mean, that's a nice return, right? When somebody starts to show me returns, in year one, I mean, over time they can grow, right? But in year one, if somebody shows me a return over 12%, I scratch my head and I think, well, that's pretty darn good. Like, why are you selling it to me? I want every piece of 12% I can get, right? Especially in year one. And so the question I would always ask a developer is, again, depending on what the return profiles look like, I might ask this question anyway, is how many are you keeping? Right? If it's such a great deal for me, like the client, the consumer, like, how many are you keeping, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm paying a retail price, which presumably has been marked up, say 22 to 25%. That's our standard margin, 22%, right? So if you took 22% off the price and reran those ROI numbers, like 12% turns into like 18% or something. I'm making up, but whatever. Yeah. But the point is that, like, how many are you keeping? And that usually will kind of flesh out a little bit of the BS in there, right? Or at least it can.
Yeah.
But,
I like that. So what? Well, I'll kind of I'll ask this question in a way that most people are going to be familiar with. So everybody listening at some point has watched HGTV where they're doing like buy my next house in Costa Rica or whatever. And
Yeah.
they show a couple, the wife's a teacher, husband's a janitor, and they got $1 million budget.
Yep.
I know that's all TV, but
It
it's
is.
the component they never talk about that I would imagine everybody's curious is how. Like, how are they financing this? They're clearly not going to drop $1 million cash on this property or $500,000 cash on this property. They might be, but in most cases, they're going to have to bring um, a lender into the mix. So,
Yep.
what does when we get outside of the borders of our country? And you own a bank, so but what
Yep.
does that component look like? If I'm planning on going, I have a budget of I'm going to go buy a $500,000 property in what you name the country. What can I expect from a down payment? Just traditional financing out in
Right.
internationally. Down payment. What kind of rates am I looking at? What kind of loan structure? Things like that.
Sure. I have to be very careful because, I do own part of a bank and I am on the board of directors, and they're very specific about what you can say and what you can't say.
Understand. Yep.
Okay. So generally speaking,
Yep.
in the region, you're going to find higher deposit down payments, right? Loan to value can be 50% to maybe 70%. So people have to come to the table with a lot more money up front. Half usually is pretty normal in the region. Interest rates are much higher than the U.S. They range from, say, maybe 11, 12% up to 16, 18%. So interest rates are higher. Deposit amount down is more. And then the terms are generally 10 to 20 years. You don't see very often or ever 30-year terms. So shorter terms mean higher payments. Interest rates are higher, but your LTV is something. So you're coming to the table with more money up front, so the amount you borrow tends to be less. That's the general framework of loans.
When you say a shorter term, 10 to 15 years, is
Yeah.
it amortized over that same amount of time?
You can amortize over longer and balloon it at 10, say.
Yeah.
But then you just end up kind of having to refi again and or whatever. So
I'm getting into the weeds with all this. Like I'm selfishly curious.
yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
true.
no.
Hey, but let me say this: as a lifestyle buyer, borrowing money makes sense.
Yeah.
As an investor buyer, borrowing money would never make sense. The interest rate would be way too high. I think what you did in Puerto Rico, by the way, is the syndication is brilliant. I think that's really the best way to stick your toe in the water internationally. And look, I would never bet against the U.S. I own real estate in the U.S. I love the United States, but I also think that it's having all my eggs in one basket, no matter how good the basket is always a little bit risky. And so from a prudence standpoint, having some small percent of your investable net worth outside your home country, I think makes sense. And by the way, sometimes people say, well, I don't want Latin America. No problem. I owned a condo in Canada for 20 years, right? I mean, go buy something in Canada. That's not the United States, right? Or buy something in Europe, right? So I think having some piece of your portfolio outside your home country makes sense, a small piece. A lot of folks like Latin America. I love Latin America, not just because we live there and I love it from a feeling standpoint. The idea that it's like a time machine, right? And I'm actually going back in time and I'm buying something, 20 years ago, right? Or 50 years ago, right? And so I get that appreciation. It's the benefit of hindsight, right? That's powerful. And if H.G. Wells showed up right now and said, "Hey, Jason, Mike, we're going to take you back 20 years, bring a check, make one investment," I think you and I are coming back a lot wealthier. I mean, right? And so the developing world is like that. It is a time machine. And so I think that's what excites me, and that's probably what excites a lot of people about doing something in Latin America. This is our world. I mean, you got Asia, you got Africa. Those are a lot harder to get to, and time zone differences. Latin America kind of works because it's close, it's convenient, flights are easy, time zones are similar. So for a lot of reasons, we've chosen to work here, and I think many people coming out of North America, pick it for the same reason.
Yeah, what would be a good strategy for, let's say, a family that wants to visit Costa Rica on a vacation, but they also kind of want to scope out some opportunities there? What's a good strategy to kind of mix those two without the whole vacation being hunting for properties? Like, what are some good resources, things like that they could check out when actually in the country?
Well, the one thing I would actually say, if you're looking for a lifestyle product, then go in the nice time of the year. Go to a place that you think you'll enjoy. Maybe a couple places. It's pretty easy to get around these countries. They're really small, right? From a physical standpoint, they're small countries. You can move easily. Try a couple different places. Spend 3 days here and 3 days there. If you have a week vacation, whatever it is, and try to make them a little bit different so you have something to compare and contrast, right? If they're really similar, you don't have whatever. But if it's a investment decision, you're not going to want to take your family, because my suggestion is go in the rainy season, go in the worst possible time of year, hot, humid, buggy, like go when it sucks. Okay. Because that's when a couple things, you're going to know the condition of the roads. Oh, how bad is this dirt road in the rainy season, right? Yeah. Can I really get through this river, this river valley, because it's, you drive across it. The dry season is dry. Rainy season, it might have an inch of water or 3 feet of water. I don't know. And what's it like that time of year, right? I think so investment again is more of a head decision. I'm not sure I'd mix the two, but if you're looking for lifestyle, yeah, go a couple places, maybe 3 places. If you're looking at different countries, the thing to do is to take a 2-week vacation and go 3 day, 4 day, 3 day, 4 day, 3 day, 4 day across 2 or 3 countries. Because here's what will absolutely happen. You will rule 1 or 2 of those places out easily. Nah, right? And the one you think, oh, that's pretty nice. Then go back and rent again there a couple times, different times of the year. There's no hurry. I think the thing that really frustrates me is people get jammed up. Oh, I got to do it. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Rent.
Right.
Go rent for a week or 2, right?
Yeah.
Try it a few times. See what you think.
I am probably one of the world's worst, because we travel quite a bit, my wife and I and the kids and stuff like that. But every new place we visit, I end up becoming obsessed with how do I buy something here, and that obsession drags on for about a month afterwards. I'm doing all my research. I can't ever make the numbers quite work, and then I just move on to the next thing. And but I, the older I get and the more of a position we get to do something like that, the more interested like I truly become in trying to acquire some unique properties in different places and stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes.
I know we got to wrap up, but let me just add one more thought. We're talking about ROI. I think that the reality is that the return on investment from a straight cash flow kind of yield perspective, a lot of times people think, I'm going to get much more if I invest overseas. That's not true. And in fact, that's dangerous, because that's what leads you down the road of buying something that's not true or not real or whatever. Look, the yield's a yield. I mean, if a good yield in the States is, 6, 8, 10, right, on a rental property, and that's kind of what you're seeing, probably 8 to 10 is probably about right. That's real. Like that can be, it can be real, right? 12, 15, it's probably not real, right? It's just probably not real. And so I think that the idea of investing overseas is far more about diversification on the front end, right? It's about getting something outside your home country. Yeah, it's only yielding 8%. Okay, that's fine. But unlike the United States, you've got the time machine factor, where as it becomes more popular, as the country becomes more developed, it's going to appreciate in value significantly faster than, say, a comparable property at the beach in the United States, if you're doing the beach. So that's the element where you start to pick up some excitement, but it takes time, 5, 7, 10 years. But that time frame with an 8, 9, 10% kind of cash flow kind of number, like rock solid, man. So
yeah, my mom. So my wife and I soon, probably in the next year or 2, we're going to buy a place in Outer Banks of North Carolina. South Carolina, place 2 hours from us. Like we would rent it out and use it as we like, but none of those properties pencil out, right? Unless you find a steal off market, you're going to be upside down for a little bit of time, or break even at best. But my mom said it perfectly last year. I was talking to her about, I was like, I see so many properties, we look into them, and I just end up walking away because there's no ROI.
right.
And she asked me the question. She said, when you go down there, because we go down there a lot and stay in friends' properties and stuff like that, and you're out there and you're sitting on that deck hearing the ocean and you're having a drink, like, can you put a price on that? And she's exactly right. I cannot. Like, there's no better feeling to me, or walking a block and then watching my kids play on the ocean all day and stuff like that. So it's hard to put a number on that
Yeah.
mentality, but there is something to that. And there's probably more to that than anything else, as long as you don't go broke trying to get it, you know?
Exactly, right? Look, it pays for itself and it appreciates over time, and
Yeah.
and then and we all know this from domestic. It's a great inflation hedge. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you buy it for X amount of money, but rents keep going up every year. It's not really like you're making any more money, but you're kind of staying okay, right? And kind of,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yep.
we'll start wrapping up, and I want to segue into the book itself, which you kind of highlighted a little bit. But what motivated you to write this book?
Just heartbreak. I mean, I was writing articles from 3 years ago, right? Just about my experiences, what was going on. Like, hey, this is a mistake I made. Here's how I would do it different next time, kind of stuff, right? And over 30 years, I'd written, I think, 300-400 articles, right? And so, I kept thinking, I got to put these in a book. I got to put these in a book. I got to put these in a book. Finally, I just nose to the grindstone over a couple-year period. I put them in a book. And the idea is that, when people come to Latin America and they have a great experience, that they tell 3 people. When they come to Latin America and they get ripped off, they tell 300 people, right? Right. And so if I can prevent the 300 from happening and help the 3s have a much better experience, or help some of the 300 have a much better experience. Like, this sounds so corny. I'm sorry, Jason, but the world's a better place. No, but it's the world's a better place when people have a good transaction, right? And they get what they want. And I want that. I want people to have a good experience. I want the transactional experience overseas, whether it's with me or my competitors, to be a good one. And this book helps to ensures a little too strong, but pretty close to ensure that happens. If somebody were to take my 30 questions and my checklist and really use this hard in the transactional process, in the due diligence process, I couldn't quite say ensure a great return, turnout on it, but pretty darn close to ensuring that they're going to get what they want to get out of the transaction.
Yeah, I love that. We're gonna put a link to the book down in the show notes. You mentioned earlier, kind of quickly, that you do also offer some consulting services and stuff like that. Is that through your website where people can find more information on that, or what's the best path there?
I'll have Paola send you the development advisor's website link, and they fill out the little information form. And by the way, if anybody goes to Amazon to get the book and they leave a review, here's what I do. Like, it's a Kindle or it's an audio book. They leave a review. Send a screenshot of the review. I will take and personalize a hard copy and send that to you, along with a chocolate bar from Belize. By the way, the offer's only good in the U.S. I can't do it outside the U.S. because you get into export issues when you're trying to send a piece of chocolate to Canada, apparently. But anyway.
I love it. I love it.
Yes,
So
yes.
I'll make sure to highlight that then with
Thank
the
you.
specific instructions. So we'll get that done. And
Yeah.
Mike, I can't thank you enough. You were gracious. I know you're busy. I know you have a lot of things to do and irons in the fire, but you took an hour out of your time a couple months ago to sit down on my other podcast. Jim, and I speak for Jim as well, we are very appreciative of the time you give to the Dealmaker community, and
Love you
everybody
guys.
that's listening and following along. So we really thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. Look, I really do. I love you guys, and I love what you do for this community. And the Dealmaker community is a community. You guys give of yourselves and your time, like I am, and if I can help to enhance our community, you can always count on me to do that.
Yeah, well, our conversation is not done because I'm gonna pick the heck out of your brain on some international investing stuff.
All right.
But I appreciate you sharing all your knowledge and wisdom with the audience. And for folks that are listening, all the links will be in the show notes. Please take him up on the offer. Go out and get the book. And if you have further questions and stuff like that, Michael's everywhere. You can find him everywhere and connect there. So Michael, with that, we're going to wrap up another episode of Dealmaker Catalyst. We'll see you next time. That wraps up this episode of the Dealmaker Catalyst. If you want to keep learning from elite operators and plug into a national community that lives this stuff every day, check out Dealmaker Catalyst. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's serious about leveling up. And we'll see you on the next Dealmaker Catalyst.